Hello, good morning, and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform. And as always, here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Easter in COVID-19. How do we chart a safe path? Questions are being asked. What's happening to the vaccination as promised? And in the world, we understand that there will be some delays in the delivery of vaccines. Ghana's power situation. Is Dumso back? That's the question. For many people, this is the simplest understanding of the circumstances we encounter now, as far as power is concerned. But why are those in charge, even the experts, sounding as though there is a political answer to what is going on? There is some row in the NDC, if you like. So we ask the question, opposition within the opposition towards an implosion. Why did Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa resign from the appointments committee? And what exactly is Haruna Idrisu saying when he says that he's in charge of the minority in parliament and that he has survived many attempts to undermine him and he will survive this time again? Is the leadership to be reconstituted? What exactly is happening to the opposition? We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's the most authoritative news analysis show, and here is Samson's take. Police don't have power to punish suspects. Police, soldiers, and local authority task force were in the news, seen and reported, caning people and administering various forms of sanctions when COVID-19 struck. They stopped trotros and brought people down, ordering them to sweep and gather litter as punishment for not wearing masks or for breaching lockdown orders. This week, some police officers were reported to have arrested people at a party on allegation that they were lesbians. Photographs clearly identified as taken by the Lankwantanan Medina Municipal Assembly have started circulating on social media. They are images of armed and cane-wielding police ordering pedestrians to kneel down in the sand in the sun and raise their hands or hold their ears, ostensibly as punishment for not using a footbridge. I do not know for how long they and those made to sweep are subjected to this. What I do know is that no security officer or institution is permitted by Ghana law to administer any form of punishment to anybody suspected of or caught committing a crime. If someone breaches particular COVID-19 protocols, the law dictates exactly what must happen, and the sanction does not include caning or being ordered by police to sweep in public. What offense are the supposed lesbians charged with when there is no such offense in Ghana law? It is difficult to understand why residents and users of that Medina road held demonstrations demanding speedy work on those footbridges as people got killed crossing the road, and yet refused to use them now that they are complete. But assuming they broke any law by the reckless conduct, the police is equally being lawless in its conduct. The assembly may pass bylaws by which spot fines may be taken from the irresponsible bunch, but Remember, your job is to enforce law, not break it. It is in your own interest to act lawfully, because once you overstep your legal mandate, you are on a frolic of your own, stripped of the law's protection as officers when trouble comes. The power granted by law to you to use reasonable force in effecting an arrest does not include license to punish suspects. Even in effecting arrests, it is not for nothing that the law allows people to resist unlawful arrest. That is when you fail to follow the law in making an arrest. It's called due process. You are committing the offense of assault when you cane people like you are doing now. It is not for nothing that even a court of law cannot order people found guilty of a crime to do things not permitted by law. The constitutional injunction is that you must not violate the dignity of any person. Let's all follow the law to protect the democracy. That's your legal rights. That's my take. And let's get to the issues we are going to canvass for you this morning. And this morning, I'm excited that I have my favorite guys who have been dealing with this matter of the COVID-19 and assisting us navigate over the period, joining us to look at what is happening. People have a lot of questions, what is going on. It does appear that after the first set of people were vaccinated, there's too much silence, and the herd immunity that we seek may elude us for as long as we do not do things quickly. I'll introduce my guests to you shortly, but this show is brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN. Everywhere you go, Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Duraplast, where Duraplast goes, water flows. Having mosquito spray and coil, pleasant on humans, tough nightmare on insects. And Napa Foods, it is tasty. DBS Industries and Robert & Sons Limited Optical Services. That's your comprehensive eye care services provider. We'll be right back to deal into detail in the Vex Matters. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's the most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Let me go straight to introduce my guests who are helping us to discuss the first issue of COVID-19 and how to chart a path of safety in the Easter season. Dr. Patrick Abuaje is Director General, Ghana Health Service. Also, Kwame Sapong Esiedu is pharmacist and fellow Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD. Thank you so very much, gentlemen, for making the time to join us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Great. So let me start with Dr. Kumabwaje. So obviously it looks like we are learning our lessons from what happened when we relaxed in December and there was a spike. Yes, even though we are recording, the numbers are beginning to reduce. We know that the death levels have been high. So once bitten, like they say, twice shy, yeah?
Yeah.
So these new measures, very exciting. I have seen armored vehicles on the beaches, and clearly the beaches have been empty since yesterday. It does appear the same thing will happen today and going through the season. How exactly would this impact on our management of COVID-19?
Yeah, thank you, Samson. Peace to your listeners. If you look at what happened, what is happening now, we are currently, our figures, and in terms of the daily numbers, is there like the just the pre-Christmas ones or probably early September, late September figures. And like you said, we've been through that trajectory before and we moved into this phase. How do we get this? What is the problem? The problem is that any festive occasion has a problem for spiking as long as the COVID-19 is concerned. COVID is spread by contacts and closeness, and this festivity brings a lot of people together, and then they all spread to their homes. And so the things we are looking for, we have to prevent the mass gatherings. And after the mass gathering, they go home and you have family clusters, people visiting people in their homes, and as part of our culture, it's another way of spreading the virus. And subsequently, 2-3 weeks later, it comes to the workplace, and then we have a major spike across the country. This is what we're trying to. So we can see that there's some effort in ensuring that the mass gatherings do not take place. Ghana Health Service has issued a statement yesterday trying to discourage people that this home visiting friends and loved ones for Easter is nice. But is there any other way we can do without going there? Because it's a major way of spreading the virus. And of course, subsequently, it goes everywhere in the country. That's what happened. And so we are happy that at least something is being done. Probably Christmas, we lost that. Maybe enforcement was not proper. And people also did not comply, despite of the numerous messages that were sent across the country. People did not comply. And we lost 440 people, 400 people in 3 months compared to 335 in 9 months. And so you can see that it's a major threat that as a country we must all sit together and ensure that we don't repeat what happened in Christmas and the sufferings of January, February, and early March. Thank you.
Isn't this what we should have been doing all through, rather than wait until the festivities and heighten it the way we are doing? Because it does appear that until now, we can't seem to be bothered, even though there is the latest executive instrument by the president that bans all these activities that we are now seeing, letters or releases being issued here and there, and the president himself having to speak and to say that these will be enforced strictly.
Well, Samson, I think this is more of risk communication, and we have started long ago. But remember that even the IGP had initiated the compliance system long before this hike and this communications, and even for our own communication. Maybe Samson, this discussion should have taken place last Saturday.
That's right.
So I believe that it's never too late, but some things were done, and I believe that with the risk communication, people were already wearing their masks, and we had probably the highest proportion of people wearing masks and social distancing. We see the number coming down, but we also see that we've been there before, and the threat of Christmas, Easter, people are going to let go, and if you don't take care, we get back to where we were before.
Right. Now, Kwame, in the latest executive instrument, which is EI 37, issued by the president in January 2021, among other things, it is so clear in the section 1 of it, it says that there is imposed by this instrument restrictions on public gatherings, including 1, beaches, festivals, pubs and bars, including hotel bars, weddings, funerals, concerts, and theatrical performances, parties, cinemas and movie houses, nightclubs, large political gatherings and rallies, and large religious gatherings such as crusades, pilgrimages, and conventions. But it makes an exception for funerals, for a maximum of 25 people to gather. Then it reinforces the wearing of mask when you are in the public, leaving or returning to your house. So why do you think we don't seem to feel that this is in place until now?
Well, thank you, Samson. There are a number of things. If you look at it critically, we are generally a lawless people. And sometimes people cringe when you say things as bluntly as it is. And therefore, just having a law in place with all the intentions, without enforcement, would let people go by their default, which is to be lawless. So if you look at the, the executive instrument, it virtually covers anything that you'd expect to be covered by way of public health constraint and containment. But if you look at the behaviors that we're seeing even prior to this Easter, and I was monitoring social media and the electronic media on Thursday, and there was traffic all over Accra, people trying to leave the city, and that concerned me a bit. It concerned me for one reason, because, like you said, there are armored tanks and other things on the beaches are being protected. It gave me the impression where people thinking we would rather leave Accra and go and do it elsewhere. And if that is the case, then we are letting ourselves down. This is way beyond the Ghana Health Service. This is way beyond government. They can promulgate all the things they have to promulgate. They can put in all the enforcement measures. But if we go into our little niches and we go and meet in our households, especially when you've traveled from a hotspot like Accra, and you go to maybe the central region, Kumasi or other things, and you go and meet people in close quarters, and you don't wear your face mask and other things, all you're going to do is spread the disease. And that is my biggest concern. I'm just hoping that I'm wrong. Because what we're seeing in Accra is great, but it's the same being replicated across the country. If you listen to Dr. Abuachi, he was emphatic in saying that one of the things they are concerned about is the close cluster meetings during festive periods. And yes, after that, between 14 and 21 days, it's going to appear in our offices. So it is good what we're seeing, but let's hope that in the regions, a similar picture is occurring as well.
I have had an indication that even some churches, and I mean churches, places of worship, are not keeping to the mandatory rules, particularly where the numbers are to be reduced and they are to do only 2 hours, not more than 2 hours. How does it feel?
Well, and that's what I said, that by default, we are lawless people. And lawlessness doesn't apply to only professionals like yourself, lawyers, journalists, doctors, pharmacists, engineers. Lawlessness applies to all the cohorts of our society. So the churches, the mosques are no exception. And to be fair, it makes me cringe, because faith is supposed to be redeeming. Faith is supposed to be reassuring. But if to go and practice your faith puts your life and the life of the general population and the public health legal framework at risk, then I would question whether you are actually being calculated in ensuring that you practice your faith. So I'm very uncomfortable with what I see about the churches, especially when you look on social media as well, and you see placards and billboards of churches advertising all sorts of things. I'm just hoping they are adverts and they are not going to go ahead with them, because if they go ahead with them and we have another uptake, that would be rather unfortunate.
I had not intended to bring in Yabuabinga somewhere at this point, because it's not supposed to be part of this first session. But Yabuabinga somewhere is here. He's Director of Communications, the New Patriotic Party. Wabi, what do you make of the implementation challenges, enforcement challenges? If you talk to the police privately, they will tell you they are doing everything they can, but this is overwhelming.
Thank you.
If they say don't assemble more than 100 people, don't do this, How are they able to police all of this? And the thing is that churches are violating it. Churches.
Thank you, Samson. Thank you to your viewers. I haven't been on Newsfile for a very long time. So
That's
let me
right.
say a special hello to Adentan constituency and my party, especially His Excellency the President, Vice President, and the leadership in Jubilee House.
Yeah, the people who asked for footbridge, it was done for them. They are not
using it. So we come back, and I'm thrilled to hear what's coming from CDD. We come back to a question of rule of law, where we assume that we deserve all the rights, but none of the duties ought to be imposed on us. Rule of law is a balanced equation. You must have rights. And I listened to your take very carefully on the footbridges, on the enforcement measures along the public transport, commercial, roadside stations and all that. And the question is, how do Ghanaians as a people perceive their duties to themselves, to each other, and indirectly, therefore, to the nation? Very little. And it is troubling. You have a situation where sometimes to enforce, you have to use excessive force, which under normal circumstances ought not to be the case. What you just called punishment, on the spot punishment by the police and otherwise. But sometimes there's an assumption that that is the only language people will understand. It's not ideal. It ought not to happen. But the question is...
It's not a question of it's not ideal. It's unlawful in the first
unlawful,
place, yeah.
And it ought not to happen.
Right.
But the question is, how do we progressively get people to assume their rightful duties? And we have a situation of COVID. And I disagree with you that we haven't been dealing with the measures. The approach has been to progressively expand the spaces beyond restriction, expand the spaces. But then you have a special occasion like Easter, then you must hike up what you're doing.
What do you mean by progressively expand the spaces? What does that mean?
You know, we started from a serious situation of restrictions back in March 2020. And then we lifted the lockdown. And then we had situations where transport operators couldn't take so many people, and then we relaxed it and said you could take a bit more,
right?
Because now you are expanding. Then we didn't used to have funerals at all.
Yes.
Then we said that, okay, you can have 25-man private burials. We expanded access to education, where a situation where we had shut down everything. Now we said that children needed to go to school, but we put in the appropriate protocols to protect them. Then we partially opened the social front. You could have a meal, provided it was properly isolated, or you could go in and take a meal away.
Right.
And in all of this, commerce continued, general commerce. And the assumption was that if you were going to go into a commercial area, you would be protected.
Right.
Everything would be provided for your use and your need in terms of protocols.
Right.
So that is what I call progressive opening up of the spaces, because we are aiming to hit normality.
There are too many people not wearing the mask, and they cannot be bothered. Meanwhile, it's a crime not to wear the mask.
And you see, the tilting point about enforcement is at the point where you can't arrest everybody. That's a tilting point. So not to get to that point means the population themselves must be conscious of their duties and be self-restrained. So our biggest problem, and it's the COVID situation, is a microcosm of what you were talking about, and it goes all the way up into our public institutions, where staff rules are not enforced, everybody seems to do what they like or otherwise. There's a certain pervasive sense of relaxed.
A very influential football administrator this week has been complaining why there have been restrictions placed on, spectatoring. And he says, why? Didn't we see what was going on? There was no in the midst of the restrictions, political activity was going on unchecked and so on and so forth. I feel sad about it, but do you get where he's coming from?
I do. And again, the political season was more or less, with hindsight, akin to the Easter season and akin to all the other periods when there is a certain specific time frame where people will gather, people will engage. So right from when the new register was being written, right through to when it was exhibited, and then the actual voting with the campaigning in between to declaration of results, there was a certain significant increase in the numbers of people congregating to do political activity. But yes, that's a period. Did we conduct ourselves well? Not entirely. But can that be compared to a regular recurring activity like football spectatoring, which will be week in, week out? Obviously, you can't relax and have the same assumptions for that kind of situation. But you can have limited spectatoring with the right protocols.
Right.
So if you don't implement that administratively, then he would feel right to be hurt. So for me, the progressive approach...
I say it's sad because I don't expect him to even use that example. The politicians were irresponsible. Therefore, allow us also to be irresponsible and to catch COVID-19 and die because of football.
Something. It is in the nature of human affairs that politicians are always on the receiving end because we happen to be a kind of breed where we are positioned for that. We are in leadership of the entire society, and therefore we become the lodestone, you see. But the bottom line is, how do we as a society ingrain respect for rule of law to the extent that people demand their rights, but at the same time they are prepared to exert their duties? Do
you think we have failed in that direction, educating the people of their duties along their rights?
Listen to Article 41. I hope I'm not taking up your time.
Yeah, go on.
Because I was not supposed to be...
I love Post 41.
I'm not supposed to be in this segment.
Yeah.
But listen to Article 41.
Right.
The exercise, and this is the 1992, it's one of the most progressive documents in the world of democracy.
That's right.
The exercise and enjoyment of rights and freedoms is inseparable from the performance of duties and obligations. And accordingly, it shall be the duty of every citizen, A, to promote the prestige and good name of Ghana and respect the symbols of the nation. Do we? It's very easy to find Ghanaians denigrating ourselves and saying all sorts of things about ourselves. To uphold and defend this constitution and the law, that obviously is only left to the government and the Attorney General. Very few people uphold this constitution and the law. To foster national unity and live in harmony with others. We are doing relatively well there. We blow a lot of hot air, but we are very humane to each other. D, to respect the rights, freedoms, and legitimate interests of others, and generally to refrain from doing acts detrimental to the welfare of other persons. That is probably where we do our worst. Everybody wants something to go for their benefit. If
you are not wearing the mask, you are endangering the next person by you.
They don't care. They think it's not necessary, and they are not interested in the other person's welfare. To work conscientiously in his lawfully chosen occupation. So people go to work late, close early,
exactly.
And whilst they are at work, they are either looking at their phone or doing their private jobs or leveraging government opportunities to do their own things. To protect and preserve public property, and expose and combat misuse and waste of public funds. The question you're going to be asked is it your father's job? That's what you're going to be asked. To contribute to the well-being of the community where that citizen lives. People dump rubbish right in front of their home, the expectation that the government will, without expecting to pay for the collection. The assumption is that rubbish will disappear.
We wait for the rain and then we drop them in the gutters.
Brand new constructed gutters which are not finished. Modern roads being constructed, and already the drains that are being constructed are choked with plastic waste because people deliberately dump waste in them. To defend Ghana and render national service when necessary. Probably that one, the soldiers are serious. National service is a very good... to cooperate with lawful agencies, the maintenance of law and order. To declare his income honestly to the appropriate and lawful agencies and to satisfy all tax obligations. Another wahala. To protect and safeguard the environment.
Right.
Article 41 is at the core of what we are discussing today.
Right.
If we were to internalize Article 41, we will be a beautiful society because we have sufficient here to organize ourselves well, provided we have that.
Okay. All right. That's interesting perspective that he brings on. So let me return to the experts on the matter of the COVID. Dr. Kumabwaji, what's happening with the expected nationwide general vaccination exercise? Soon after the first batch of vaccines arrived, we were informed, and you confirmed here on Newsfile, that we had received vaccines from elsewhere as well. And within a matter of a week or two, we're expecting several from various other quarters. What's going on? Please unmute. Please unmute.
Yeah, thank you, Samson. Just before I go there, allow me to just make a short statement on the enforcement. I think COVID, we are balancing health, social services, and economy. Can you imagine arresting all those people in Medina into the prison cells? You'll be promoting the same COVID, you'll be spreading the same COVID. And so what we have been doing is engagement early. And even though before Easter, we had engaged the chiefs, we had engaged the local government, we had engaged the churches. That's why they came out with the circular banning conventions, etc. But of course, there are many churches who do not belong to some of these organized groups. And so we also engage the local government to ensure that within the locality, some of this education and to some extent, some ensuring compliance takes place so that we do not. We have also engaged the sports that, yes, this festivity, we need to be very careful because the celebration is very difficult to contain. So that's the dilemma we have. But most importantly, I think we must ensure that the family visit, that is that those small nations that are the greatest challenge that we cannot control by the police. But nobody's going to tell you can't go to this house. You go to UK, you have to meet somebody, come out and meet them because they also identify that as a challenge. So that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah,
now,
but in respect of saying arresting people because they are not wearing masks, I remember that you did a lot of work to improve the mask wearing very dramatically. I don't know if that is still going on, but the government had been, made aware that the law as regarding the mandatory mask wearing, it's simply unenforceable. The police have made it very clear that it is impractical. The government has been called upon to take the example of the whole municipal assembly, for example, where they had imposed spot fines. If you are not wearing a mask, you pay 10 cedis, 20 cedis, I think that's the maximum, and then you are handed mask. That is a more practical way of enforcing that rule. The government has not seemed bothered, and so get onto the street right now, and I can assure you that the first, perhaps 10 people you may count will not be in masks. That's sad.
Yeah, I think we are the best is for people to really compare, and that's why we have also engaged the local government to also be an integral part of the fight. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So the vaccines.
On the vaccines, yes, we have received so far close to 900,000 plus vaccines, almost 1 million vaccines, which currently is going on. We are still in the first phase where we are targeting health workers and other groups of people over 60s, those with comorbidity, security services, etc. Currently, we are doing all the health workers across the country, and then we are also moving to a few more regions since yesterday to do the same clustering of people, especially in the relatively hotter hotspot regions in the country. Yes, we're still waiting for more vaccines. There's been a lot of engagement, a lot of orders, etc. have been done. But as you are aware, there's a real global crunch for vaccines. And just like other countries, Ghana too is also working very hard to get our stocks. We have a few coming in. And the only problem, nobody's able to give you the exact date, but periodically we get. Our greatest challenge is we are working towards getting from end of April. That's when the very first time those who took the first are supposed to take their vaccine. We deliberately chose 8 weeks, which is the minimum, but the range is 8 to 12 weeks, and the longer the duration, the better the response. And so from end of April to say end of May, we are hoping that we'll be able to get the people for AstraZeneca for the second dose. And so everybody, the minister, the president, my finance minister, everybody's working very hard together. We are confident that we'll be able to meet that deadline based on all that arrangement that have been done. At the same time, a lot of work has gone on into getting other vaccines. Now, you cannot just limit yourself to one vaccine, or you may not get enough of that. And so we are looking at Sputnik, we are looking at other vaccines, and there's a lot of activity that's taking place. And we are hoping that we are still vaccinating. That why we want to do that, we don't stop vaccinating. I will get some to continue until our deadline of October, where we hope that a significant number of people, about 20 million people, would have been vaccinated. We're still keeping hope alive for other targets, and we believe that with the activity that done. And I think in the world, when there's a crunch like that, there's response. Most of the countries are expanding their production, etc. And we are hoping that based on that, we'll be able to, if India starts exporting AstraZeneca, we should be able to get ourselves from COVAX and all the bilaterals that the government's making.
Kwame, from what you have monitored so far, are we really on course as planned?
Thanks, Samson. You see, the vaccine supply chain was always going to be tricky. And though we've gotten to this point, some of us are not surprised. The point is, on Tuesday, the WHO issued a statement where they actually said that there was a delay to COVAX of 90 million doses of vaccines. 40 million that wasn't delivered in March, and 50 million that would not be delivered in April. They also issued guidance on how countries who were reliant on COVAX should operate in a vaccine-constrained environment. They have indicated that the vaccines should be coming in June. The problem now globally is the way the European Union is behaving. Because if I listen to Dr. Abuaji well, he was talking that they are trying bilateral agreements with Sputnik and other things. Currently, the European Union has jettisoned towards Sputnik, and they are not actually speaking to Glameya, they are speaking to Vladimir Putin. There have been 3 conference calls in the last 3 days between Putin, Merkel, Macron, and von der Leyen. And because the Russians also have sanctions against them, Putin is also trying to play his game properly, because there's a geopolitical undertone to all this. He's trying to play his games properly so that he can also get these sanctions removed. As that is going on, the European Union are also in a tug war with AstraZeneca because of UK. And while that has been going on, the major supplier of AstraZeneca, which is Serum Institute of India, have also got a caveat, which was actually issued in January by the Indian government to say 50% of all their supply should go to the Indian country because they are having a wave. However, when it was issued in January, India didn't enforce it because there were blocs like the EU who quietly spoke to India to say that they would struggle and other things. So India didn't enforce it. But 2 weeks ago, they suddenly started having a spike. So then they put their foot down and said, Serum Institute cannot export. Now here's the case. The European Union is blocking exports already. They've blocked exports to Australia. They are now threatening that they are not going to allow the production plant of AstraZeneca in Holland to supply to the UK, which then means that the UK would not be able to meet its commitment to COVAX. So the main problem that concerns me is the fact that the supply chain would continue going through this geopolitical gerrymandering until the European Union gets its act together. And it's become so bad that even 2 days ago, on the 1st, the WHO had to rebuke the European Union. And you see, the WHO hardly rebukes. But when the WHO rebukes a bloc, the biggest trading bloc in the world, like the European Union, then you have to realize that they realize that the geopolitics is actually affecting the entire globe. If you then bring it to Ghana, you realize that the good thing for the likes of Dr. Abuaji was they got their vaccines first because of all our advantages when it comes to the expanded vaccination program and all the fact that we're always around the 90% and all that. But some countries haven't even received their first supply. There are actually 19 countries who've not received their first supply. And COVAX are saying that unless they've all received, they are not going to go into the second lock for, countries like Ghana. So I don't see us getting the vaccines by the 8th week. And I'm glad Dr. Abuaji has acknowledged it in what he says. But their strategy, like when I saw the vaccination program, I said, It was smart because they were looking at 8 weeks, but they knew that the window was 12 weeks. So we have 4 weeks within which we need to ensure that the European Union stops this bull in the China shop behavior. Otherwise, we would overshoot the 12th week. But I know that the WHO has issued guidance should that happen. And I'm quite sure that Abuaji has a copy of the guidance and the stuff like that. So it is about risk communication. We need to be honest with the public and level up with them like I'm doing now and tell them that we could overshoot.
So my question to you,
acknowledge that.
My question to you substantively was, from where you have monitored events so far, are we on course? We were expecting, is it 2.4 million AstraZeneca shots through the COVAX by the end of May. And now we're being told that until sometime in June. Much earlier, you had suggested that we're going to get somewhere into, is it June, July? So are we on course?
Something, yes. Based on what I suggested, we are on course. The problem was we overpromised by saying we were going to get it in April. And people got very elated. But for those of us who look at the movement of drugs in international commerce, we had seen all these red flags. And that was why I said at that point, I think I was on the program actually with Dr. Abuaji, and I said at that point that though the president has promised, I'm a pragmatist. And looking at all the caveats, which now have become reality, we were not going to get it in April or May. And I said it because sometimes it's unfortunate. Some of the portals I am on in the biomedical sphere, it's not everything that you can come and put in public. But I had seen letters, I had seen emails, confidentially from the Indian Parliament going here and there. And looking at it all, I knew that these people were going to pull rank on us. And so I said it. And that was why I gave the caveats. Now the caveats are here. And the problem is, how do we go past the caveats? Unfortunately, we don't have a hand in it. We are bystanders because we were not at the table. We are not involved in clinical trials and all that. So it's not just Ghana. A lot of countries are bystanders, apart from Chile, which has played the game and therefore has more vaccines than it needs for 90 million people and already has the vaccines in the country and has production plants. Everyone else is a bystander. And that was what I was saying then, and that is what has put us off track now. But the reality is, from the timeline I had seen, even in the conventional COVAX document, which I had seen then, COVAX also were aware of all those things and knew that we were going to get to June.
Right. Dr. Abuaji, my understanding from what you have said is that there's clearly no cause for alarm because even if we received what is required by May, or we didn't get it by May, but by June, there would not be problem. Is that not so?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that, yes, we are not relying solely only on COVAX. We are doing other bilateral organizations. There are reorganizations to ensure that we get vaccines. It's not just COVAX. It's not Sino Serum Institute, but it's also other organizations, other countries that have stocks. Okay, we just received some from South Africa through MTN. Okay, so all these arrangements are going on to be able to get vaccines whilst we wait for the 6.4 million doses or 12.4 million doses from Cuba within whatever period they are. They have actually increased 30%. But the government is also engaging other bilaterals. When I say bilateral, not just Sputnik or anything, but even others who may have the vaccines. There are countries who have vaccines that they are not using. The AstraZeneca locked up in countries, and I'm sure Kwame knows, who may not use them. And so there are all manner of arrangements that are being done. And so we are not just relying on that. We know we're going to have a challenge with COVAX coming in. There's also the private sector approach that there are private organizations that are also trying to find vaccines. And all that is, so we have multiple approaches to getting the vaccines. Yes, we are worried, but I believe that because we did not put all our eggs in one basket, we still hope that we might still be able to get vaccine. Beyond COVAX, we have received over 300,000 additional AstraZeneca. And I think these are the kind of arrangement that we are hoping that it will continue for us to continue vaccinating until the systems ease up. Yeah.
Okay. So I got my shot on the 9th of March. And I'm supposed to take my next one on the 5th or so of July, I think. Should I be worried?
Well, I mean, we gave you 8 weeks, so you have a 4-week grace period within which you can have. And we are working around the clock, even at this Easter period, to doing all bilaterals to ensure that we get vaccines to the country. To continue vaccinating, Sputnik, etc. There are a few arrangements that have been done. So we are hopeful that we'll be able to meet that. And everybody's working very hard, including COVAX themselves, UNICEF, and all our partners are working very hard with that to ensure that we do not miss those targets. Not just that target, but we also have people who have not even received their first shot. And we are working towards getting all of them vaccinated. Because until everybody is vaccinated, even those countries who are trying to keep it and trying to bring COVID passports, still they are not safe as long as everybody else is not protected.
You're right.
So I think there will be some global consensus that allows every country to protect it.
So supposing that some situation occurs, my second shot, can I get any other brand?
There's no scientific evidence now that if you take first shot AstraZeneca, you can take Sputnik second shot. But I also know there are studies going on to see how it works. And so until those results come out, we cannot propose that you'll be able to take another vaccine in lieu of, that's why when you take one and take a second one. Even though they are supposed to be producing the same antibodies to protect you, the science is not there. We need to be very cautious to ensure that we have strong evidence of safety and efficacy before we can go ahead. There are studies going on, and I believe that even one that may be taking place in Ghana soon.
Please remind us briefly, where and when do we get to herd immunity? Which is the aim of the vaccination?
That's a very tricky question. It's a whole range of 66% to about 80%. And so it's quite tricky. But I believe that about 75% should help us. And under the current restriction, doesn't even take us to the 75% because currently, because we are not giving to children under 18 and pregnant women, it takes us about, even if we can vaccinate maximum about 66% of the population. But there are new evidence coming out, maybe safer in children, maybe safer in pregnant women. So as the boundaries move, we'll head towards herd immunity. But one thing that people must know is that it's not so much about whether it is 94% or 70%. If you have a herd immunity, even for a vaccine at 50%, it's still protective enough.
Kwame, can you respond to that same question?
Yes, the herd immunity threshold is shifting. It's shifting because of the strains. You know, when it first started, the reproductive number, the R value, was around 3. With the UK strain, South African strain, and Brazilian strain, it's moved to about 4.5, 4.7. Which then moves the herd immunity to about 81%. And that's why Dr. Abwaji is saying that between 66 and 80% should be fine. The problem under the constraint we have is that there's evidence coming that you are better off having a large number of people having their first shot compared with having a fewer people have 2 shots. So you are better off a lot of people having their first shot, and that is what the UK has done. And that's what a number of countries are doing. So to answer your question, even though the herd immunity threshold is between 70 and 80%, if we can get enough vaccines to even in the next 5 months get about 60 or even 50% of the immunizable population, because the immunizable population is different from the general population. Our immunizable population is only 22 million because it's 62% of our population, because The rest are below the age of 15. So our immunizable population, if we can get 50% of them immunized, their first dose, and even we struggle with the second dose, reading the document from WHO about working in a vaccine-constrained environment, I would be much more confident. And why would I be much more confident? If you look at the Sputnik vaccine, it's actually two vaccines. It is not the same like AstraZeneca where you are injecting the same vector. There are two vaccines. You give the first dose and you give the second dose. That primarily answers that question of can you use two different vaccines? Sputnik have already done that, and that is why there are tests going on that if Sputnik has done it and is getting this immune response, can we not do it with other vaccines? And the data already has started coming out. I know the MHRA in the UK is reviewing some preliminary data on that. And I expect that in the next 4 or 5 weeks, we'll have definite answers. But when you go onto immunological platforms like on Clubhouse and all that, a lot of the immunologists are veering towards the idea that that will be possible based on the way the Sputnik vaccine has been engineered. So that is how, that's why I am quite relaxed about it, because I'm thinking the first dose, in fact, in the UK, the first dose has virtually decreased mortality to single numbers from when we're looking at 2,000 and other things. So the emphasis for me should be to get as many people first dose immunized as possible.
And in that direction, what do you say? What do you feel about the progress so far?
Well, it is tricky. Like I said, the worst thing when you look at movement of drugs in international commerce is to be a bystander. And that is why, if you remember, sometime around November, I was on this same program, and I did say that we need to start thinking of being involved in bilateral, clinical trials and other things, because that's what Chile did. Chile is not a rich country. How come they are the third highest when it comes to vaccinations? How come they are the second highest when it comes to the number of people who've received 2 doses? And they have about 61% of their population receiving their first dose and over 22% of their population receiving the second dose. Why? Because all the vaccines you see on the market, from the Chinese to the Russians to the British to the ones that are coming, they'll never, Novavax, they did clinical trials in Chile. And there are only 19 million people. But what the Chileans said was if you come and do the trials, you have to manufacture in their country. One of the conditions was you wouldn't import vaccines to come and trial. They needed to also get the technology to manufacture. So now what's happening? They've got 88 million vaccines for 19 million people, and they are giving out to Latin America. We could have done the same. We have Noguchi, we have Navrongo, we have KCCA, we have Kintapo. We could have done the same thing. And for me, that is where I feel a bit anxious that we didn't. And now we are bystanders, and we are so reliant on all this geopolitics and bullying the China shop behavior from EU. So that makes me a bit concerned.
Okay, so very finally,
I can add.
Right. Okay, go ahead. I wanted to take your final comments.
And I think what Kwame is saying is very important. We need to participate. So I mean, whatever comes part is part like being tested on us, and it works on us. The last time I mentioned it, the media was on my neck. They want us to be guinea pigs. We tried, Ebola trial was aborted. We are doing malaria trials, and there was a lot of Ebola, but at least now it's going on. And these are the things that we must contribute to the global knowledge and also be beneficiary of that. And that's how you get technology. The president is working towards us producing our own vaccines. You don't do that if you don't collaborate in such settings and get the knowledge to be able to do it. And I think it's about time, like I'm saying, that we start participating. There are safety measures that are put in place before you. So it's not just become like a guinea pig, but there are systems in place that protect people who participate in this clinical trials. I'm saying Kwame did that in the UK and still alive.
All right. So Kwame, I want you final take before Dr. Badi gives us his. What should the roadmap look like to get to, an assurance that we are safe in this vaccination period?
Well, the roadmap, like I said, we are bystanders. The roadmap should be bilateral conversations with the likes of, at the moment, the whole world, whether we like it or not, is at the mercy of Boris Johnson. How he managed to hoodwink the entire globe to be in that controlling position, because he's controlling remotely India and Serum Institute. The plant that has been built in Thailand was funded by the UK. He gave money for a plant to be built in the Netherlands for production of vaccines. He's controlling Novavax, which is coming. He's controlling Valneva. Regions from AU and all that need to be speaking to him, because now he's an independent person. He's not part of the EU or anything like that. Then we need to also speak to the likes of the EU. Some of the statements coming out of the EU are unhelpful. But like Dr. Abuaji said, if they continue down that route with their vaccine passports and all that, they will still not be protected. Now they are in lockdown. Now their mortalities are even spiking higher than the UK, who they said were dying at the point when UK was doing all these things. So we need to look at this roadmap as a global collective and accept our limitations and the learnings from things that some of us were saying right at the beginning about participation and all that, and start being proactive. We can even now, it's not too late to say we want to be involved in the trials for between 12 and 16-year-olds, for example. It's not too late. If that happens, we would be in a position where there will be vaccines coming into the country. Because once the vaccines are coming into the country for the 12 to 16-year-olds, because that is not going to be double-blinded, considering that efficacy has already been proven, it will be safety to see if the vaccines are safe in that age group. But what will happen, the more people who participate, they will come as part of the number who go towards our herd immunity drive. It will cut transmission in that age group. We need to be very, very smart in playing this movement of drugs in international commerce games. There are so many tricks about them. Some of them I cannot say openly on air, but there's a lot that we can do. Serious things, we can shake the goalpost easily if we seriously want to. And I'm quite sure Dr. Abuaji and Co. sometimes privately they know the sort of stuff we say.
Thank you.
We can do things.
Thank you. The final words from Dr. Kumabuaji.
Thank you very much, Samson. I think we are hopeful, and we are working, still using our segmentations, and just like as we've done, there's a lot of new learnings that comes up, and as we come up, if the evidence is that probably one dose is enough for you to go on, we may go along that direction. It depends on the learning, so we're still sticking to our projections on how we're going to go around it. But we are also open to the new learnings that are going to come in, and that are going to guide whatever we do as far as colonization is concerned. But we are doing a lot of bilateral engagement. We are not leaving the COVAXs and the factories alone. We're engaging all of them to ensure that we have vaccines for all. But this is a very good window for us. We are virtually coming out of the second wave, and this gives us a good window to vaccinate as many people as possible to avoid any further spikes in the country.
But you are certainly concerned that things are not, panning out the way you planned.
Yes, in terms of the vaccine supply, yes, we are. But we have also not given up, though, because we are doing many other things to ensure that we are able to get vaccines so that we don't meet the target. Because, like I said, this is a very, very important window. Today we are reporting the same figures like late September, 80 cases, 21 cases. This is the time to vaccinate as many people as possible to look at. And like I said, even currently, we are continuing to vaccinate, and we are expanding to 7 other regions to start vaccinating. Hopefully, more vaccines will come in. We'll continue.
Gentlemen, thank you so very much. Dr. Patrick Kumabuaji is Director General of the Ghana Health Service, and Dr. Kwame Saponga Siedu is Pharmacist and Fellow Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
To grow and fester, and you're being called upon to come and pay. And because we do not see an end in sight, and because we don't see the solutions coming, you're going to be called upon to pay.
So you expect utility prices to go up? I mean, electricity prices?
No, but there is no debate about that. This is a major tariff review year.
Okay.
So PURC, and I can imagine the difficult situation they may be in at this point, where the grid is not stable, and yet you have to review the tariff. So it's going to be a very tough decision for PURC to take.
What you say scares me. I mean, in back of all the budget taxes increasing, that
no, this year is a measure.
It's a guarantee that we're going to see
that tariff will go up significantly.
When the time comes, we will inform Ghanaians. Currently, what we are doing, we have to be sure, because we cannot go and take off power and do nothing. We have to be sure of the time and the extent. So we are liaising with the contractors. Not only the contractors, ECG is also involved. NIDA, who is the project funding agency, is also involved.
What exactly is happening in the power sector? We'll be right back to deal with that.
Currently, we are constructing the Pokwasi substation, the Kaswa substation. These two substations are being funded under the Millennium Challenge Compact Tube projects. So MIDA is managing that funding for us. So you have Pokwasi and Kaswa. And then we have projects that are being funded by AFD, Agence Française de Développement. And they are financing major transmission line projects from Tema to Accra and to Malam. We believe that by June, July, when all these projects are being completed, Ghanaians will now enjoy reliable power. But in order for them to be completed, the contractors on these projects have requested for outages. These outages are going to affect only Accra, I repeat, only Accra and Winneba. It is not nationwide. Pokwasi, the 330 came from Abuaze. We are diverting it to Pokwasi. And in order for you to divert it, you have to disconnect the 330 kV network. Otherwise, somebody will burn to death. So that is why it's going to happen. So in Kaswa, we are going to connect the existing lines from Cape Coast and Winneba, connect it to the Kaswa substation and continue to Accra. In order to do that, you have to take those lines off, and it will affect supply. So that is why we'll be coming to Accraians and Winnebans and say that these are the outages that are going to happen. It will affect you for a duration, and because by the time we will come out, we will know exactly the amounts and the duration. We would want to inform those who will be affected how it will be done so that they can plan their lives.
You're welcome back. And you have been listening to the Great Co talk about the power situation. Mark Ewaba is head systems operations at Great Co. And we are also being joined by Enusa Fuseni, lawyer and member National Democratic Congress, former MP and former minister. Thank you for joining us, Honorable Enusa Fuseni.
And how are you?
I'm very good. Thanks for asking. Now, from where you sit, yes, from where you sit, what has been your observation about the situation so far, and what do you make of the explanations that we are getting from the state, so to speak, as in the operators and the minister? You know, they did a joint conference and a press release.
Samson, thank you for the opportunity to be part of this program. Samson, no one will deny the fact that we have been experiencing intermittent power outages for some time now. And all these times that we have been experiencing those intermittent power outages, no one has attributed the outages to the development activities that are being carried out by GRICO. No one has ever said that. We have also known that the independent power producers have always indicated that government owes them so much, and that might threaten their ability and capacity to continue to deliver power to the state. Now, power outages would come by two ways. If there's a supply side constraint, that is, those who produce the power are not able to supply enough power for the country, then GRICO will transmit the power to the power distributors, and they would then distribute as and when the power is available. I mean, they will have to manage the supply side constraint. The other side constraint is the demand side constraint, where we have demand growing and then we don't have enough plants to produce the power. There you have to ration. It's just like water flowing through your tap. You have to ration the power to make sure that everybody gets a bit of that power that is not available. Now, I find it quite strange for GRICO to be saying that because they are doing development activities in Bokwasi and Winneba, those development activities will interrupt or affect or interfere with their ability to continue to deliver service to the people of this country. Because you see, when you are doing development activities, you are erecting new substations. Those new substations will only come on stream when they are fully completed. And then the existing lines are then transferred onto the new substation. That is when you can reasonably understand that because of the transfer of the power from the existing power stations or substations to the new substations, there will be interruption. And this normally might take 1 day, 1 week, or some number of days. Now, to say that because you are building a 33 kV line from Abuasi to Accra, and you are going to divert the line, so you are going to disconnect, it's a bit problematic for me. I mean, having worked at the Ministry of Energy for some time, it's quite problematic. Now, but GRICO's difficulties, and they ought to be forthcoming with the people of this country. When I worked at the Ministry of Energy as Deputy Minister in charge of power, GRICO was a very profitable establishment. That led the Agence Française de Développement to grant or to give GRICO a lot of facilities to be able to upgrade the network. And you've also heard that the Millennium Challenge account is supporting GRICO to build their substations. Now, the Millennium Challenge account came in because they appreciated the power constraints that we had. At that time, indeed, the constraints that we had in this country were generation constraints and distribution constraints. They were not transmission constraints. But of course, to ensure that the system becomes and remains robust, they needed to put in some infrastructure to ensure that the transmission network was robust enough to carry the power from the producers to the suppliers. Now, we are being told by the latest financial records available that I have seen that GRICO is heavily indebted. That for some months in the past, they had serious challenges even in paying salaries of workers. That they have defaulted in the payment of even social security. So, and GRICO is being run as a tolling establishment. They carry the power from the generators to the distributors, and they pay tolling fees. So is it that GRICO is unable to transmit the power by reason of the obsolete nature of its equipment, or what is accounting for the depreciation in the financials of GRICO? So, in fact, my initial comments are simply that, look, we are faced with a difficulty. In power generation, just like in any system, you need redundancy. And that was why when President John Evans Atta Mills became the president of this country, he said, look, work to ensure that at any time in this country, we will have about 10% redundancy to stabilize the power sector. Now, somebody must pay for the redundancy. And that was why PURC was mandated to ensure that in calculating the tariffs, they account for the redundancy that was going to be created to stabilize the power. We must also be asking government how it managed the free power that it gave. How much did government or does government owe the power sector as we speak? How much is it? Is the debt compromising the ability of the power sector to continue to deliver services to the people of this country? Apart from the covert free power, we also know that MMDAs or the MDAs, that is the ministries, departments, and energy agencies, owe a lot of money to the power producers. And these MDAs are government institutions. We want to know what government is doing to ensure that they pay up on their debt to these service providers so that they can continue to provide efficient and effective services to the people of this country. This is power. It's just like petroleum or petroleum products. When you produce and sell, you must be paid before you can plow back the money into generating more power for the people. When you produce power, transmit the power, distribute, and there's no payment, then the power sector will definitely be hard hit by the non-payment for the services rendered. We are also told that in, for instance, ECG, that transmission losses alone, transmission losses, which includes commercial losses, that is, supply of power to persons which cannot be accounted for, it's about 23%. It's huge. It's huge. What is ECG doing to ensure that they cut down on transmission losses? Even collection of tariffs for power or services provided to customers is a challenge for ECG. Conservative estimates put it at 180 million a year. And so, if they are selling power and they are unable to collect the money, then how can we, as a people, be guaranteed of reliable supply of power?
All right.
To put it bluntly, the power sector is presently in crisis, and we need to look critically at the power sector to see what we can do to bring it up straight.
It's in crisis because it's broke, is that it?
It's broke. It's broke.
Okay, so hold on for me. And Ben Boachi, Executive Director, Africa Center for Energy Policy, ASEP, has also been with us on Zoom. Thank you very much for joining us, Ben.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so very much. So I'd like you to, I know you know a lot more. I want you to hear from the two politicians who have the opportunity of the facts also. Then we will have you speak. Yes, YB.
I don't envy Ben's position as a referee, particularly how you ended, whether the sector was broke. Apparently, it's been broke historically for several years.
Okay.
But let me first.
What do you know is what is happening? For many people,
I'm going to.
For many people, this is doom so that we are running away from.
I think we should speak to that.
Right.
It's very important we speak to that. Let me just say hello to my very good friend. Inusa, and wish him well in retirement. When he voluntarily left Parliament, I thought I would be staying to carry on. Now I have been forced out.
Right.
So, Inusa, I hope you enjoy your retirement.
Thank you.
But
thank you.
Power politics, as in energy, is very emotional in this country. Very, very emotional. I mean, there was a time when it was about petrol. Anytime there was a budget about to be read and petrol was the single indicator. Now it's about electricity. Given the history of the past few years, the era of Dumso, I'm not surprised officials in charge of the current situation feel skittish. Because when the lights go off suddenly, even the managing director will feel under pressure from his family and friends. When my daughter asks me, why have they put it off? I am under pressure to answer. The question is why? Not that they have put it off, but why have they put it off? So everybody suffers. Everybody suffers when the lights go down. But I want us to appreciate that this is a second generation round of outages. It is not the typical doomsaw that we experienced before, which we could ascribe to generation issues. At the time, we were discussing whether it was about capacity to generate or capacity to fuel what was in situ. Happily, that set of problems we would assume we had overcome because we have established some sort of ability to continue generating. So there's a certain appreciation that we have moved beyond generation issues now, whether or not the funds are adequate or not, but there is some sort of inbuilt resilience that we have achieved in the generation area. So now we have come to a second generation one. This generation is different from the other generation. This second generation is a verb for a new situation, which is an addition to the problems we were experiencing before, transmission challenges. So whatever is happening now, from my understanding, factually, is that we have adequate generation and we have increased consumption, and that is putting pressure on our ability to transmit and distribute. So the infrastructure for transmission has come under extreme pressure. Now the difference with a traditional doomsaw where one transformer in the neighborhood trips and the neighborhood goes off, and a trip on a grid-co main line is that's a wholesale line. And that means once it trips, a whole region could go off, even if a particular part of that region wasn't the direct source of the trip. So we had a situation where one day the entire country went off. There are those inherent dangers in there about how the tripping goes on and the impact on the plants and all those things. Those are technical matters, because some of the plants, when they go off suddenly, they have a lifeline reduction and all that. But the key thing now is that you could suffer an outage almost innocently because you're on the wholesale line, which is a grid-co. So this is a more critical situation than before. That we need to quickly upgrade transmission in order to stabilize the system. I know for a fact that government's main object is a consistent, affordable availability of power to ensure jobs, incomes, as well as social use. But how do we overcome this period? Happily, there are ongoing efforts, and that is where we hear grid-co giving us all the major investments that are ongoing. Ideally, those investments, as Gridco says, should give us some level of stability and enhanced use in the medium term. Into the long term, other parts of others will come on stream, including gas, which will reduce cost of production and all those things. But immediately, how do we support Gridco to deliver what it has promised us? There is that skepticism about official positions, because at the end of the day, as for me, I want my light. If I don't get my light, it's doomsday. So that patience to accept that this doomsday is a different kind of doomsday is not there. So we must accept that. I think the officials in the sector and the politicians must accept that. This is the kind of situation where if you are in opposition, it's sweet. If you are in government, you are hot. And it could easily be the other way around, because the opponents would then jump on you and say, we told you so. You couldn't control, you said we couldn't control doom, so now you are giving us doom. So, and then the incumbent, that's we, are trying to explain, oh, this is a different kind of doom. So, but then the user still believes that I don't have light, you deprive me of light. So the clear difference that this is not going to be sustained. And this, on the scale it happens, obviously cannot continue to happen. That's why I'm saying it's not going to be sustained. It's a different kind of thing where whole swathes of the country go off. And it hasn't been as consistent as often as it was before. Therefore, we need to accept at face value what Gridco is telling us as the official agency who control that process. That one, they are actually in the process of sorting it out. They are installing new equipment, investing new money, and two, within a certain time frame. I'm hearing up to July. It's likely that this will be over. And that when it is over, we'll have a more solid, resilient distribution infrastructure.
But that claim is being questioned, that they are doing some upgrade. The point, what we are hearing rather, is that they are installing, if you like, or building bulk supply points, like Inusa just suggested, and that should have nothing whatsoever to do with what we have been experiencing.
Questioning is fair. Criticism is fair. You still need your light. And anytime you don't have light, you lose something.
Yes.
You lose social...
So we are seeking the truth.
Yes. So the truth is that, like I said, given our history of doomsday and all that, public officials will be a bit skittish about whatever is happening and may shy away from engaging the public, which is the wrong approach. So I am happy that Gridco is finally coming out on a public platform, engaging all of us and telling us that this is what we are doing. As to the technical feasibility, whether one can run systems and then establish new patching systems in there whilst this continues, technical capacity, I'll fall on the side of Gridco. I can't fall on the side of my honorable colleague Inusa. Even though he's worked in the energy ministry, I can't take his word for it that you can run it without, because for all you know, there are genuine system failures. Because these projects have been going on since 2018. We've also heard that there were issues from 2018 about timing for renewal of certain equipment. But that, it was not renewed at that time because there were issues with the cash flow. So Gridco had to sit back and deal with sovereign guarantees for government. And
have you read about their financial situation, what the Auditor General has to say about them?
Yes, I have. But I want us to separate the two. I want us to look at their administrative issues and operational issues in situ now as distinct from the new investment and the ongoing improvements they are promising to the installed grid. Because they are two distinct things.
Yes,
if you are going to borrow money...
They may be, but does that not give you an idea of what is happening to them?
Yeah, but exactly what is happening to them. That's what I'm saying. That, as Inusa said, there was a time when they attracted good money to invest. And I've hinted that on or about 2018, they themselves were talking about engaging their financiers further. So that slowed down the cash flow. So now, at that time, things that they could have done to keep themselves better afloat, they have delayed. And now, in doing those things at this stage, 2020, 2021, they have a lag, which is impacting on their ability, clearly. Now, in that lag, they also seem to have suffered some administrative financial lapses. You understand? But it is an ongoing institution, it is still running, and therefore it can turn itself around. The power sector.
We'll be showing the breakdown as from the budgets regarding the debts,
yes.
Particularly how they are indebted to various partners in the project. For example, the Enclave Power Company Limited, in excess of 3 million. You have the Prestia Sankofa Company, the Great Consolidated Diamonds, a number of places they seem to have.
They are not indebted to Great Consolidated. Great Consolidated is indebted to them all.
Okay, so as we begin to project what the picture looks like as far as Greco's debt situation is, as you can see on your screens if you are watching us by TV, let me ask Ben. So Ben, what exactly is your understanding of what is going on? First, is there ongoing upgrading as claimed in Pokwase and Kaswa? Is it rather that it's a building of bulk supply points, as Inusa suggests, and that should have no impact in the power supply situation?
Thanks, Samson. I appreciate that those developments are happening. The Pokwase development is happening. The Kaswa is also happening, and the Agence Française Développement investment on the replacement of the some of the lines to 161 kilovolts is also happening. But the problem we have at hand now has to do with the existing infrastructure, and that has to be clarified. And I think Greco chose their words quite carefully when they were engaging the media, not to tell the public that directly what they are doing is what is causing the problems that we are seeing currently. What we are faced with is the failing of the existing infrastructure. And we shouldn't confuse that with the development that is happening. We can appreciate that once the Pokwase development is completed, it will take a lot of the load and we'll be able to stabilize power for many parts of Accra. The same with the Kaswa project as well. But we are not there yet. We've not even gotten to the point where they interface with the existing infrastructure. All right. So it is the existing infrastructure that is failing, and we have to speak to it. Why is the existing infrastructure not able to deliver power? Essentially what is happening is that you have demand outstripping the capacity of the transmission infrastructure to wheel the power required to our homes and our businesses. And therefore, when the load is too high, either systems will trip or Greco will have to knock off some areas to save the system from tripping. And we have been here because of problems that we do know and we've been talking about for almost a decade now, which is a triple barrel, if you like, a problem that has to do with the technical capacity of the infrastructure to actually deliver power efficiently, the financial situation of the power sector, and managerial problems that the power sector has faced. Technical because you have aging infrastructure that you need to replace and also upgrade because you have demand growing. And we have been failing to anticipate rightly and invest the right amount of technical solutions that would deliver power efficiently. Financial, because of course it takes money to buy the equipment and be able to invest. And we have failed to optimize the sector for the sector to pay for itself. Because the value chain, the generation, transmission, distribution, really depends on how much money is raised from the benefit when power has been consumed. But we've not been able to optimize the distribution end to be able to raise enough money to finance the value chain. And therefore, intermittently, we're asking government to come in. And if you check the key projects that Greco mentioned, these are donor projects. These are handouts, if you like. So the question is, without these handouts, how would the system be faring 2-3 years down the line? All right, we are not investing, and the power sector is unable to generate the right resources to be able to fund its operations. It's also managerial because there are certain decisions that can be taken by management of these institutions, whether it is ECG, GRIDCO, or VRA, that are owned by the state. And there is ample evidence, even in government-owned documents, an assessment that was done way back in 2014, for which we thought we had to inject private investment into ECG. And these three things were identified. Because if you look at the commercial losses that happen at the level of ECG, where power theft is rampant and consistently been going up, in the past year, it's appreciated about 2 percentage points. All right, so people are stealing power, and in most cases, they are being aided by ECG's own staff to do the illegal connection. ECG management cannot pretend not to know that this is happening. There are instances where you have a business consume so much electricity, and for them to go and pay for the electricity, you have ECG staff destroy the meter so that a new meter is brought there, and you can't even read what has been consumed over the period. These are managerial problems that has to be addressed. Otherwise, you inject as much money as possible and you will not solve the problem. GRIDCO also has its own managerial problems. In government's own report, the supply plan for 2020, it is stated that the capacitor banks, which is they are critical equipment to ensure that we can stabilize the grid and provide a smooth supply of electricity as demand grows within a day. These capacitor banks are almost 40, right? We have about 944 megawatts of capacity banks installed across the country. And the assessments show that only 28% was functional in 2020. And, it further states that if we were to bring on 70%, we will save about 35 megawatts of power. If we did 90%, we will save about 38 megawatts of electricity. But what is even interesting is that these are not expensive equipment if you look at the numbers in the power sector. So these are equipment that GRIDCO can prioritize from its own limited resources to be able to fix them. So you are not investing in equipment that will cost you just about $10 million to fix, even if you were to replace all of them. And guess what? We are wasting about $2.5 million every month for not fixing those equipment. That is not something that government has to come and provide money for. These are managerial issues that can be addressed from whatever resources they get from the system. So
did you say $2.5 million every month wasted?
$2.5 million wasted for 38 megawatts of power that is not consumed, but wasted on the grid line because of a $10 million equipment that we have to fix. You understand?
People don't understand why we have heard over the period that we have excess capacity, and yet we are sleeping in darkness, and businesses are not able to operate during the day, some of the days, because of the current situation.
And even the scale of the problem is not appreciated if you just look at those dynamics. Even today, there are many areas where you have the light on, but it's not usable. All right, because of the low voltage that is being supplied to those areas. Ordinarily, Ghana, you should give us 220 volts. But in some areas, they are doing 190, 180 volts. And that voltage cannot be used by many equipments. Many intelligent systems will not allow a machine to operate at that voltage. So you have the light in the area, but businesses cannot use it. You have to either invest into your own transformer to be able to stabilize or bump up the load to 220 before you can use your system. So if you don't have the money, you just have to switch on to your generator to be able to produce or function as a business.
You said, yeah.
We complain about excess capacity that we need to action and ensure that we demand and use that electricity. But we have low voltage that cannot be used by businesses. So how do you wipe the excess capacity that you do have when the systems that are supposed to transmit the power optimally?
It's interesting.
To use.
It's interesting. I'll get you to interpret the figures as we have got from the budget to us about this issue of outstanding trade debtors, and the breakdown brings us to a total of 234 million plus. But you said this is a matter of the existing infrastructure failing. So did they deceive or mislead us as to what the cause of this problem is?
No, I think, like I said, what I heard them say, they were careful, but if you don't understand the sector, you may be, confused to think that they were saying that it is really those infrastructure that is causing the problem. It's a separate development. The existing infrastructure is failing. In fact, when the Pokwase substation is completed, it wouldn't take a week to connect, to the grid. So you don't really need this kind of discussion to be able to loop onto the existing infrastructure, which is a 33 kVA Abuaze Tema line that they want to connect to. It's the same with the Kaswa project. New pylons are being developed. What that means is that you are constructing new lines, and then when you are done, you replace the old ones. So at what point do you blame those developments on the existing infrastructure? They are not connected.
Right.
All right. So we need to address why the existing infrastructure is failing, because even when you have finished the construction of the Pokwase and Kaswa project, there are many other investment requirements across the country that we need to pay attention to. Last week, there was load shedding in Brekum because, the transformer, Grico's transformer, blew, and they had to put a smaller transformer on there. So they had to shed load in that part of the country. There are many parts of the country that are experiencing trips, just because the systems are failing. So we need money, not just for Accra, but to invest in other parts of the country that are experiencing similar challenges. And that was why I was shocked, to hear the Gridco boss say that they don't have challenges financially to address their maintenance problems. I mean, we wouldn't be here if they had money to maintain their systems and upgrade them over the period. The problem is that there hasn't been enough money to be able to upgrade the systems, and therefore we're hoping that
we just lost him. Hello, Ben. Okay, Ben's line is frozen. Ben, if you can hear me, I'd like you to quickly bring us into how the matters that we had to deal with PDS may come into the present situation, as in the failure in the management of the PDS situation, and then I needed you to interpret the figures that we have displayed on the screen. Are you on, Ben? Okay, we seem to have lost Ben there. We will make contact with Ben and then get him to. Now, Honorable Nusaf Hussaini, having listened to Ben, what else catches your attention about this situation?
You see, the problem, indeed, Ben has given us a bird's eye view of the problems that are confronting the energy sector, and particularly the power distribution sector. It is important for all of us to understand that if there is historical underdevelopment, underinvestment in the power sector, you will experience situations like this. I mean, you can't run away from it, and you can't use new development, like upgrading your system or building bulk supply points to justify why you have power outages. You can't.
Okay, please hold on. Please hold on for me. Let me finish with Ben. Hi, Ben, you are back.
Yes, sorry about the trip.
Yes, you were concluding on that last point, but we lost you when you were just about concluding on that point.
Yes, so I think I was explaining that, I mean, there is a challenge with existing infrastructure, and that has to do with the underinvestment over the years. We had to fix that, because otherwise you finish a problem with Pokwase and Kaswa, and then you have to go to address other challenges. And also critically, at the distribution end are bigger challenges, but because GridCo is up now, we are not even focusing on that side. Low voltage across the country is becoming a normal situation, which we have to address to allow people to use the power that is on the lines, because not many businesses can buy their own transformers to be able to boost the power to make it usable.
I was asking, where does the mismanagement of the PDS situation come in here?
No, I think it was a very unfortunate situation because we identified the problem in 2014 and decided that a minimum $500 million investment was required to be able to upgrade the systems of ECG for them to address some of the challenges that they have. And we ended up with a structure that could not guarantee that investment. All right, so we had to recoil from that. And we were promised that within 3 months, we were coming out with an alternative to attract investment into the distribution of electricity. That hasn't happened 2 years down the line. So if we are to fix the value chain and stop the debt accumulation, we need to fix the distribution end where revenue is generated to be able to pay the value chain, and also ensure that management across the value chain can be fixed, and issues of procurement, issues of poor decisions, and paying attention to petty investment that could be addressed.
Are you saying
from the limited resources?
Are you saying that? Are you saying we haven't? Are you saying we haven't lost the investment that would have gone into the PDS management?
The investment didn't come in the first instance.
Is it lost or it is not lost? That's the question.
We lost the opportunity to invite the private sector into the space around that time. But the challenge was that the assurance of the required investment was not there from the transaction we had with PDS. They couldn't raise even guarantees to assure us that they were going to invest $500 million minimum in the distribution of electricity, and therefore it was not tenable to continue that direction. But of course, you can trace back to the same politics and interference in the structure that would have led to choosing a company that would have invested into the distribution of electricity.
All right, so finally, I wanted you to try and give us some interpretation to the chart that we are putting on again right now as regards what we have come to learn, including GridCo's inability, as it were, to take care of its SNIT situation, and what that might, if that may be any reflection of the financial situation it faces.
Yes, so these are numbers that reflect some of the major companies that owe GridCo, and if they were able to raise this money, they could have invested. But this is data from 2017. I would assume that in 2021, the numbers may be significantly different. This is the Auditor General's numbers from audit for 2017. So the debt situation has been worsening. Indebtedness to GridCo has been worsening over the years, and it requires that we pay attention to deal with these ones. Some of them are not very significant. I mean, if you talk about 684,000 by Akosomo Testa, that could be a month's bill or 2 months' bill. But it again highlights that we have to improve on the liquidity of the distribution and transmission of electricity to ensure that they can recover.
How do we come to this situation where they are owed and they can't get the money and therefore they are in trouble, as the report suggests?
Because most of them are government entities, and when you have a problem with a government entity, you call a minister, and the minister intervenes. Let them continue to use it. Who will pay you, and it never gets paid. So those are the challenges, because they are not functioning as a business that looks at this bottom line and say, you pay or you get disconnected. All right. There's always interference to keep them consuming power.
Right.
And if you check the financials of VACO has been making losses year on year, and we keep throwing money at it. And they're also weakening the capacity of other institutions. They buy power from VRA, they don't pay.
Yeah.
They get transmission from Grico, they don't pay.
Right.
And so they continue to weaken the whole system.
So now we are supposed to pay for all of this. And as you suggest, it simply comes down to mismanagement, lack of investment that is required, and doing it at the right time, wasting opportunities that present themselves, like the PDS. And the government wants us to applaud it that, it was able to stop that process. We are going to pay for it. You say there's no two ways about it. We will definitely be paying high, increases in electricity. Why so?
Yes, but before that, let me clarify that. We supported the cancellation of the PDS transaction because it didn't show the path for investing in the distribution of electricity. But the failing can also be attributed to government because they didn't allow a more transparent process in selecting PDS to allow a company with a financial muscle to actually deliver them. But on the tariff issue, we have to pay more for electricity. For the inefficiencies, we have to pay for it, and also the true cost of generating electricity. If government doesn't want that to happen, then it has to show where it's going to raise the money to be able to bridge the difference and to allow the sector to be functional and optimal. We have to also fix issues of management and governance in general. The problem you have with the system is that you have ministers, politicians turn into procurement officers intervening in these agencies. And therefore, if you go to take procurement and contracts for friends and family, you are not able to control what they also do. And I keep telling the politicians, if you allow an agency to allow you to push through one transaction, they will do 100 for themselves. All right? So we have to allow the systems to work and hold them accountable. That is the only way we can fix the inefficiencies and improper poor management in the value chain. And that is how every functioning power sector really works. It's not about whether it is government that owns it or private sector that owns it. But if management cannot have the free will to function and be held accountable, you can't have a functioning system. And that is where we are as a country.
And my final question to you is from one of our viewers who says, government should tell us the renegotiation price for gas, which was the reason for the 2017 tariffs. What is the details of the capacity charges? PURC should answer questions why they reduced the tariffs in 2017.
Wow, that's a very interesting question that I might need about 30 minutes, but let me try. We reduced the tariff because government said it had negotiated down gas price from a headline of about 9.8 to about 6.29, I think. And that is what PURC used in computing the tariff. It turned out that that negotiation never even happened. Okay, so that we were underpricing the gas that had gone into the tariff. So that margin has to be taken care of by government. And that is why the debt accumulation on government side keeps increasing. So PURC this time around will have to ensure that we pass through the entire gas price. If government is not going to complete the renegotiation to ensure that the actual price is what PURC is using to determine the tariff. Otherwise, the debt accumulation will continue to occur. Another thing that we are doing is also to bring in an imported gas through LNG, even when clearly we have excess domestic gas. So that also injects about $300 million into the debt situation that has to be paid for. That has to be factored into the calculation of the tariff if that decision is taken, which we think is so poor and we have to abandon almost immediately. If we don't iron out these inefficiencies, the tariff will have to be adjusted to compensate for all these inefficiencies. And if we are not able to do that, then more debts will sit with the agencies. And that also has implication on how much they can invest to make the sector much more robust, to deliver power to the consumer.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben. Clearly, Honorable Minister of Sene, I'm taking your very final comments on this matter. Clearly, this is where we are. We simply have no options. We're going to have to pay for more.
Yeah, we're going to have to pay for more. Samson, we are already paying for more. I mean, do you know the cost that you incur when you put on your generator consequent upon power outage? Do you know the cost that you incur when the power goes off and your things that you have stored in your refrigerator go bad? So we're already paying for, except that we're not seeing it. Many people are not seeing that we're already paying for it. Now, I have said when I was at the Ministry of Energy that what appears to be troubling us in Ghana is that there's no price discrimination in the distribution and the sale of power. Now, if people are going to use power for commercial purposes, in other jurisdictions, the residential consumers subsidize commercial consumers. So for commercial consumers to be able to buy power cheaply and then produce, create employment, pay taxes, create employment, produce, sell, make profit, and pay corporate taxes. That is the way you grow an economy and make sure that your industries are working. Now, the unit cost power in the production process is already high. And so our commodities are not competitive. Now, if we increase power across board, the same problem is going to dog the manufacturing sector, and the products will become uncompetitive. And so I believe that we need a whole strategic look at our power sector and see what exactly we can do to tweak the way we produce and distribute power to ensure that the balance is in favor of industry, so that the industry can create the employment. Power poverty might be reduced thereby because people will be employed and they will be getting revenue or income which they can use to buy power. And then there will be individual responsibility on people to manage the use of their power. But in all things, I think that the government itself must stay off the power sector. If government does not stay off the power sector and continues to use the power sector to play politics, we are going to be in this problem for a long haul.
Thank you, Honorable Nusa Fuseni. Of course, shortly we will be going to deal with the matters happening in the NDC, in Parliament. Yes, So,
a few remarks.
So this is not what you promised us, you know. This is not what you promised us. You gave us an indication soon upon assuming the reins of government that, you know, you were going to be kind to us. So you renegotiated gas prices and tariff, and then you gave us some comfort, and you trumpeted that over a long period to show that you have been very good at managing this situation. All of a sudden, we seem to be back to a point where we are supposed to pay for what you may have got us to enjoy.
To a large extent, we've been kind to ourselves, all of us, to a large extent, because this is a national situation. It's not a regime-based situation. And I must say that for a very long time, this is the first time I've had a discussion where politicians are involved and yet it's not political.
Right.
That is so important that we don't politicize that sector. Now, one of the biggest things that's happening in energy is the transparency. Anybody can have access to the energy sector recovery program. And it has everything about the energy sector as at 2017, 18, right through to 19, and projections into 2020. And you can download it on the site of the Energy Commission. All the matters we are discussing here are in there, including the cross-sector debts which need to be subsidized by government. And the fact that at the moment, government is having an audit, the object of which is to finally settle those arrears owed within the sector on the part of the government SOEs. So things are happening. They are transparent. Now, we promised that we will stabilize the sector. We will clear them. So, Samson, like I said, when we came in, we've managed to tackle that problem head on.
As for Dumso, I keep saying that it is misleading and unacceptable for you to claim that you came to end Dumso. Dumso ended before you took over.
Dumso ended?
Yes.
In what way?
Dumso ended before you took over.
In what way?
I think that should be beyond debate.
That it ended before we took over?
Yes, you didn't. It wasn't
an ongoing
process.
You
didn't end Dumso.
There is that contention. At the moment, there is that contention.
It shouldn't be.
We believe strongly that our interventions stabilized that front and made sure that we didn't have it for a long time.
You can't show what intervention that you did to end Dumso because it had ended.
We stabilized the financial flows. We have taken on the overcapacity. We are paying the take-or-pay bills. We are ensuring that the suppliers receive their funds.
You came to meet excess power. Excess power simply means we didn't have Dumso when you took over. You took over and you were unhappy, and you have gotten all of us to understand that we were saddled with power we don't need.
Samson, excess power, once installed, has to be paid for. That's the meaning of the take or pay, even when you don't use it. That means if you don't pay for it, you can't have that power, even though it's installed. So there was a financial overhang that we kept saying was the reason why it wasn't regular. Power was irregular. We insisted that there was a financial overhang. We dealt with that financial overhang imaginatively. We managed to get it going again. And on that side, we've taken it in hand. We are renegotiating the take-or-pay agreements. The excess power we are bringing in hand. In other words, it's there. Now we are saying that no more extra capacity. We've put that on hold for some time. The installed capacity, we are renegotiating to bring down the costs. So we are doing that. We are attempting to bring down the overall cost of production. We're also rationalizing the gas. You know, we've shifted car power to the west so that we reduce the load from the east, move it into the west, take gas directly from the west and distribute it so that the grid is more effective. And the gas mix is what reduces the cost of production. Ghana has some of the highest costs, 12 to 15. That's against the others who are doing. The chart is all in the ESRP. So we have worked on the electricity sector. But unfortunately for us, that overhang between 2018 and now, where GridCo should have had consistent investments in its ability to transmit, has caught up with it. Now, I do not accept that the new investments, the new additions to the lines will not impact us. They will definitely impact us. And maintenance is ongoing. That we do the new ones and patch them into the grid does not mean that we will stop maintaining the rest. And we shouldn't confuse distribution with transmission, because the local level transformers and all that are ECG issues. Those are distribution issues. But in terms of the actual transmission from the generation to ECG distribution, these new projects will definitely impact. And in doing them, the idea is to make the distribution grid, the transmission grid more resilient. So it's important that we accept that there is a problem, but the problem is being worked on and will be solved. Yes, so going forward, I think we need to be very dispassionate about the power sector issues. We need to be very, very dispassionate. Power has two objects. It's a cost of production, which means you have to keep it as low, the cost as low as possible, because it's an input.
Right.
Businesses have to take it in, large or small. and use it to turn around and make a profit in order to create incomes and jobs. That's one key thing. And then it's also a social good. People use it for educational purposes, for entertainment, for domestic, and all those purposes. And that purpose also, in a sense, has to mean that you keep the pricing down. So how do we get to the point as a nation where we have optimal power costing, which is paid for and by whom? Can government continue to subsidize power across board, petroleum and electricity? Can the people, including business and the social sector users, be able to pay the full realizable cost of generating it? How are we going to leverage our fossil resources, gas and fuel offshore, to ensure that we have inputs that will reduce the cost substantially? And in all of this, there are legacy debts to contend with, there are legacy issues to contend with, and of course, there's the future to look at.
So you admit that what you sought to do soon upon assuming office on the basis of your promise in the first term was not sustainable, as the watchers, including Ben Boache and the rest of them, have been saying. It was not sustainable. No, and that's where we are getting to now.
No, I wouldn't accept that. I want us to appreciate that we have a twofold situation now. And that the first set of issues to do with generation, capacity and generation, we've dealt with. I think we have managed to do that. We know the problems and we know how to go about them.
And you are still solving the needless excess power capacity that we're saddled with.
So we are on top of our game where that first part of it is concerned, which is what we promised. But now we have a new situation, which is the transmission. That was not part of the election.
But you agree that competent management should not see us in the present situation?
I think I should speak briefly to that. It's very important.
That's incompetence. That's what it tells.
No, listen. We have had power generation in this country for over 60 years, since the inception of Akosombo. We have some of the finest engineers ever. In fact, we export engineers to other countries. I think it's important that we appreciate merit and that we look at the right way of enabling them to function in order that they are accountable for their actions. It's so critical. We can't just wipe an entire generation, 2, 3, 4 generations of engineers out that they are incompetent. They can't be that incompetent. They've kept the lights on in the face of major challenges, including natural hazards like no water in the dams, transition to the mix of hydro and thermal, and they have simply kept things going. We shouldn't, but yes, we can improve on management, but we shouldn't just dismiss them entirely. And then, of course, we've just been talking about the finance. Sometimes we are too hard on ourselves. Sometimes we are too hard on ourselves. Let us realize that we need bulk investment into the energy.
We need to move on.
Very well.
Thank you very much. But if you handed me a job, which I was expected to make profit, and I can't even collect my debt. I don't know what else that is. And I saddle the entire nation into darkness and give them light at the time they do not need a light, when they are sleeping. That clearly signals to me some mark of incompetence.
If the inputs are not all entirely in your control.
Okay. So this show is brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Duraplus, where Duraplus goes, water flows. Having mosquito spray and coil, pleasant on humans, tough nightmare on insects. And Napa Foods, it's tasty. DBS Industries and Robert & Sons Limited, optical services, your comprehensive eye care services provider.
Our front is solid, the caucus is solid. Obviously, in the group, you have all these group dynamics, challenges come. And I always tell people that, if we run a caucus and there are no challenges, then we are not making progress.
Will the NDC survive the opposition within the opposition? Is it towards an implosion? We'll be right. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. It's brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN, everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Duraplast, where Duraplast goes, water flows. Having mosquito spray and coil, pleasant on humans, tough nightmare on insects. And Napa Foods, it is tasty. DBS Industries and Robert & Sons Limited Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care services provider. So what's going on in the NDC with Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa resigning from the appointments committee and assigning no reasons, but everybody appears to seem to know the reason he resigns. And the NDC decides to get into a crunch meeting as a leadership, and Seydou Nketia announces that leadership will change or it will not. Let's listen to Seydou Nketia, then we come. I start with Yabwabenga Samwa. I have Professor Ransford Jampo of the University of Ghana also joining us. And then we'll finish up with Inus Afuseni explaining what is going on in his party.
It was a party decision.
I see, but some of your members in Parliament I have said about the decision. In fact, today, Ablakwa has resigned from being a member of the appointment committee.
I don't know.
How's the party taking that?
I haven't heard about his resignation. I don't have any copy about his resignation.
Have you received a letter?
I'm unable to comment on letters I haven't read. So you know my style. If I read a document and you want me to comment on it, I will do. But I will be surprised if it is coming out of Ken Ofori-Atta's approval. It shouldn't be coming out of Ken Ofori-Atta's.
Because we do understand that they demanded some further information from Ken, so the approval they offered was conditional. If he's able to provide it, then they can approve him. Ken didn't do that, and so they decided not to approve him. But unfortunately,
I am saying that there was a party decision that let President Akufo-Addo have his finance minister, and that has been achieved. So what is all this about? Details about who agreed or who didn't agree. The point is that this was a party decision. It has been implemented, and that's all. That's the end of the story.
Have you ever seen me retract my words publicly? Hardly. You know why? There is a hadith of the Prophet I have always used to guide me. I don't comment on doubtful matters. I comment on what I know. You know, the hadith of the Prophet said that the forbidden is known, the unforbidden is known. Between them are doubtful matters. Avoid doubtful matters. You see, you are questioning me about doubtful matters. I'm keeping away from them because they are doubtful matters. But time and truth. You've heard my famous quote, God cannot be for and against the same matter at the same time. God has choices, and God makes choices. Time will make choices. As for undermine, I have survived it. I will survive it.
So, yeah, what do you understand is what is going on in the NDC in Parliament?
I think there's a major power struggle going on within the NDC as a whole, not just in Parliament.
Their party rank and file so disappointed in them.
Because that leadership vacuum that they are fighting for, the previous leadership did not deal candidly with the followers because they wanted to sustain themselves in leadership, and they chose the wrong approach. Before I go on that tangent, let me crave your indulgence. My colleague Habib Adams, who is the secretary to the ESRP, the Energy Sector Recovery Program Implementation Committee, has sent me 2 pieces of information. Let me just share it quickly. It's very important. One, the Doomsort debate. You have Fosu Ampofo saying something that if NDC had been retained in power, they would have ended Doomsort. So he's brought that reference, and I'll send you the link. Then the second one, which is more important to me, is that he tells us that government has paid off all MDA bills in excess of 500 million since 2012. MDA bills to ECG. I think these are two very important pieces. So Habib, thank you very much for those. I couldn't recall Ofosu Ampofu that quickly, but I know for a fact.
I'm not interested in the politics.
Let's go to politics.
Yeah.
Let's go to politics. Let's go to politics. So you have a situation where clearly there's a major power vacuum in the NDC that is being filled now. You had Rawlings and Mahama leading the party at some point, with the Conservatives following Rawlings and the others, the new groups following Mahama. Now Rawlings is no more. Who steps into that gap? And then John Mahama has failed twice at elections. So is he ready to be pushed out? Now, a big factor in all of that is the parliamentary group. Now, let us be clear. This power struggle does not mean that the NDC is going to die. The inherent structures of the 1992 Constitution will not even allow that. Multi-party choices, the opportunity to grow and all that. But it is a necessary process for a renewal or rebirth of the NDC itself, except that the way it's being conducted is so brutal. So you have a situation where the parliamentary party appears to be disrespected by the national leadership. And the national leadership seems to be imposing on the parliamentary party so that they are able to go in there and say that they will change the leadership based on decisions the parliamentary group have been making in conducting their business, that they are dissatisfied and they want to appease the foot soldiers by attacking the current leadership. And then the leadership says that we are in charge. And indeed, we have been confirmed, contrary to what Edun Ketia is saying. I don't know if you've heard my former colleague, ABA Fuseni, who proposed to speak on behalf of the minority, that the process of confirming the leadership has happened, and it won't happen again. It has already been done, contrary to Edun Ketia's assertions that they stalled because of the court case and all that. So you can see that the opening salvos have been done already, and that was part of it was the Supreme Court exit strategy, after which John Mahama's come fired at Alban Babin and Haruna that they hadn't conducted themselves well by approving the ministerial list to turn the fire on them. But now look at Babin. Is he in a good position to take over Rawlings' space? Because don't forget, Babin has been a moderate kidder all along. He was there from the beginning. He's been in there all along. And therefore, if he's in a position of power and authority now, the cadres will back him. 2, is Haruna strong enough to withstand the attack? And the resignation is part of that attack. I was trying to find out, to do a bit of mischief, if an MP had the right to resign from a committee, because you've been sent there, the orders have duties for you to perform, but the standing order just says that you have to belong to a minimum of 1 committee. So I can't base myself to deal with that resignation.
But there will not be even common sense to say that one appointed to a committee doesn't have the right to resign.
Move on. But the question is the replacement processes and what it imposes on that caucus. Yes, but that's why I'm saying that I went to the standing orders. I didn't find any mischief I could, but so it's a legitimate shot in seeking to dislodge Haruna. Question: can that succeed? I don't think it will succeed. It will not succeed because I believe the Speaker's side will rally to the support of the incumbent leadership. And I also believe that the leadership have an inherent strength at the moment in Parliament. That will be difficult for CDU.
I don't understand. You know, a strategic shot at Haruna over what?
The leadership. They want to get rid of that leadership. It's a power struggle.
And to get rid of the leadership, your members must resign, one member must resign from a committee to say what?
It's a signal. It's a signal
of a vote of no confidence.
Yes, it's a signal to show that you're no more in charge. You're not leading us. That's why Haruna had to come and say, I am still in charge. Because if Haruna leads them to do something, and then some members, and those members were part of the decision, come out and say, no, for some reason, I have resigned. And it's so contiguous that you know that it's because of that. Then it's a clear signal
Can't we say that Okudzeto is independent-minded to a large extent, irrespective of the whip system in Parliament? We remember how, at the start of your regime, Muntaka, brought the issue of the bribery. Okudzeto had issues, and you could tell that, he would go his way, even if it will hurt the group.
You see, at this time, the NDC is in such a state that any individual taking any action will be taking it in pursuit of a group agenda within the NDC. It is clear. There are groups within the NDC, and there's a leadership vacuum. In all of this, where is the chairman? The Council of Elders pussyfooting around, being neutral and all that. As Yedun Ketia starts to announce decisions in Parliament, outside Parliament, he's operating as a second speaker. Does that mean that Parliament is going to be teleguided from party headquarters in public? You understand what I'm saying? So at this time, there are movements in the nature of the control of the NDC. And those movements are coming from disparate groups within the NDC. And nobody in that system can be acting independently and alone at this time.
Professor Ransford Jampo of the Department of Political Science, University of Ghana, thank you very much. What's your reading of what is happening within the NDC in Parliament? Some say that Okudzeto clearly is giving a signal that he supports the masses of the party who have shown over a period now that they are so disappointed in their MPs for the manner in which they have gone ahead to endorse some of the nominees of the president. And that's clearly what he's doing. There are even speculations that some more of the members of this committee will also resign because they do a collective thing, and then they do something and everybody gets blamed. But some of them are quick to come to the public to say, I didn't vote for this person. I didn't approve that. Please unmute. Professor Jampo, please unmute.
Sorry. Thank you, Samson. I think what is going on within the NDC is as a result of some form of leadership failure and betrayal on the part of their representatives in Parliament. We have, for the first time in the history of Ghana's Fourth Republic, had a hung Parliament. Whether you like it or not, regardless of how you interpret it, it's 137 plus one independent candidate. Since 1992, it's always happened that whoever wins the presidency gets a convincing majority in Parliament. And so Parliament becomes under the control of the executive arm of government. And so if you look at the new presidential system of government that we are now operating, that combines the features of the parliamentary system and the presidential system together, that says that some members of parliament would have to also be appointed as ministers. It's happened such that a member of parliament who is also a minister is unable to critique whatever goes on the floor of parliament, especially if it's coming from the executive arm of government to which he or she belongs. And a member of parliament who belongs to a ruling party and who has not benefited from ministerial appointment would want to also praise more, because the more you praise, the more you better or you improve your chances of being elected or selected as a minister. Now, don't forget that anytime these things go on, you would always have the minority, and the minority's influence within parliament has always been confined to the belief or the practice that they can always have their say, but they will always not have their way. And so, number one, the minority is cut into size. They cannot influence anything. The majority would always praise the government. So that the more you praise, the more you, if you don't have a ministerial appointment, the more you praise, the more you improve your chances of being selected. And the one who is a minister and also a member of parliament is unable to critique
And so they would always also praise. Now, because of that, Parliament from 1992 has always rubber-stamped the decisions of the executive arm of government. I think Ghanaians were aware of this. That's how come they voted for the kind of parliament that we have today, a hung parliament. That now makes it mandatory for Parliament to assert its role as a countervailing authority to the powers of the executive arm of government. And by countervailing authority, we are simply saying that there must always be the existence of power that will counter the exercise of power, so that the executive president does not become a political king kong like it's always been. Now, so a government is elected, a government nominates its ministers, and the ministers go to Parliament to be vetted. Now, during the vetting, we had some of the people from the minority group coming out to say that, well, XYZ ministers are not going to be approved because we've been able to dig into them and we've been able to see that they don't have what it takes to serve as ministers, and so we are not going to support them. Now, they go to the floor of Parliament and they go and overturn their earlier position, and they fully lend their support. And they are unable to proffer any explanation to the people of Ghana. Fast forward to their unanimous approval of Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta. I don't have a problem with Mr.
Consensus approval. You said unanimous approval. It's consensus approval.
Well, okay. Now, before then, like I said, I don't have a problem with Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta. If you speak to him one-on-one, you realize that he means well. And he has his foot on the pedal, and also the way he articulates his issues calmly and all that is said that he's able to easily disarm his opponents and all that. But that aside, so the minority before his vetting had made, particularly those who pontificate on the issues of the economy and on finance, they had made all of us to believe that this was a very wicked, callous finance minister who had deliberately engineered the collapse of people's banks just for the purposes of protecting his own data bank. He had done so many things that had run down the public purse, and he's bringing a Japan deal. And they said so many, in fact, they hypnotized so many Ghanaians and into believing that Ken Ofori-Atta was not a political saint at all. So they succeeded in demonizing this man. Now, you demonize the man, and then you also insinuate or hint that because of that, you are not going
Okay, so
to give him the... And then, hello.
Yes, you are on. You are on.
Hello.
You are on. Prof. Jampo, you are on.
Yes. And then you go and... yes. So you go and give a consensus approval, and I'm told that it is only Adongo and then late say Okudetwa Ablakwa has resigned. Adongo came out to say, well, I didn't vote and all that. I have a lot of respect for Okudetwa Ablakwa for the decision he's taken, because I'll tell you, Okudetwa Ablakwa was my student, and because of the relationship I have with him, I was able to get into him to find out, look, what is going on. And there were some of the things that he told me that we're not going to do X, Y, Z. And then they turned out to go and do the very things that they said they were not going to do without an explanation and all that. It creates an impression that they are either involved in some form of unholy politics of convenience, or something else that we are unable to put a finger on happened, that they themselves are also unable, or they don't want to explain, happened to change their mind. And sometimes, if you don't take it, then you send people's mind to what some of them had previously alleged. You remember, at one point in time, one MP alleged that in the course of voting, some of them were compromised, and they were given certain things that forced them to vote in a certain way. I'm not saying that this is what happened, but you cannot hypnotize all of us into thinking that, look, Parliament is now going to play its role as a countervailing authority to the executive powers.
Is it not possible?
All of a sudden, you get to the floor of parliament.
Is it not possible?
In a manner that contradicts.
Is it not possible? Is it not possible to see Okudzeto's action as one of a principal decision, as one of a vote of no confidence in the committee and not the NDC leadership in parliament?
Well, I've always argued that it appears that our politicians have no principles and they have no conviction. And so they do anything that they please. But what Okudzeto Ablakwa did, in my view, is a demonstration of somebody who believes in principles and somebody who has conviction. Because, like I said, I knew that he had a position that XYZ should not be approved. But some way, somehow, I don't know whether it's because of the ACRIP system or whatever. You see, it should be possible for us to have majority agreeing on a particular decision. But if you have a principle, if you're a man of conviction, you should be able to stand out and say that, look, let them all vote for Y. But I want to be on record to have dissented. Samson, haven't you been part of a meeting where everybody was approving of a proposal, and then one person will say that I should be on record for having dissented? That person is simply telling you that he has principles, he believes in conviction and all that. And so, for me, I think, yes, he acted based on conviction, and he acted based on the fact that he believes in principle, and we must commend him because it's not all politicians who do this. And for those of them who
have Professor Janko, hold on for me. Let me bring in Inus of Sene here. Honorable Inus of Sene, are you with us? Hello?
I am with you, yes.
Great. What do you make of the interpretations that have been put on Okudzeto's action? And why did it have to? Why did it have to, bring about the party in parliament and out of parliament having to meet, and then Esedun Ketia telling all of us that the approval of the finance minister was a party decision and not, as it were, that of the MPs in the party's group in parliament?
Thompson, there is no doubt that what is happening presently in Parliament within the NDC minority is a matter of serious concern. There's no doubt about that. There's also no doubt that the appointments committee's vetting and the approval of the ministers attracted the air of the grassroots. There's no doubt about that. But you recall that I appeared on your program about 4 weeks ago, and I gave you my understanding and reading of the standing orders. My reading and understanding of the standing orders. You recall? Now, I have said that because we failed or neglected to inform the generality of our supporters on what could happen in Parliament, that probably accounts for the reason why we are here. And especially, like Professor Jampo has said, this is the first time ever in the history of the Fourth Republic, I dare say even the history of Ghana, that we have had a parliament that is evenly divided among or between the ruling party and the opposition. And the fact that on the 7th day of January 2021, the minority did what has never been done in the history of this country. They elected a speaker. So the expectations were high. And the grassroots reasonably and legitimately were expected to have those expectations. Now, when those expectations were not met, that clearly, what we are seeing clearly is the fallout of that expectation. It's not any betrayal. It's not any crisis in leadership. It's the failure of the minority in parliament, leadership of the party, to manage the expectation of the grassroots in understanding the parliamentary procedure and practice. That has got us to where we are. Let me say briefly on Ablakwa, and I've heard you say, common sense say if you are a member of the committee, you can resign. You don't become a member of the committee by election. You don't. You are appointed onto the member, onto a committee, a standing committee or a select committee.
Does it matter?
It matters. In the standing orders, wherever you have the right to resign, it is stated there. It is stated there in the standing order.
That what?
That where you have the right to resign, it's stated there, where a person can resign. But if you take Esquemé is the authority on parliamentary practice and procedure. And it's written on the mother of all parliaments in Britain. When you are appointed onto a committee, you are put in charge of a committee until you are discharged. And there's a procedure for discharging you. There's a procedure.
Sorry.
Sorry. The rule of law.
Sorry, in very simple language, are you saying that he doesn't reserve the right to resign?
No. Samson, you're a lawyer.
I can't find it here.
Can you imagine the kind of disarray that will occasion if members of committees begin writing letters of resignation? Can you imagine that what will happen?
I think it will be better for this democracy that people can exercise independent minds rather than the whip system. The whip system that appears to render some of them as though they are zombies.
You know that the rule of law is as important to substantive law as it is to procedure. You know that. And so when you are put in charge of a committee, when you are a member of the committee, you are put as a member of the committee by the committee on selection. And the committee on selection can move a motion on the floor of the House to remove you from the committee.
Honorable Yunusa Hussaini, even the president can wake up one morning and say, I don't want to be president.
I'm not talking about the president. I'm talking about parliamentary procedure.
And I'm telling you at the very top that it doesn't make even common sense to suggest that because there's a procedure to put you into a committee, you do not have the liberty to determine at any point that you are not interested.
I don't intend to argue with you on this matter. I mean, I think that when you leave the program, you can just take parliamentary practice and look at how to go onto a committee and how to leave the committee. You can just take it and look at it. I don't intend to argue with you on this matter. And I'm not going on the route of common sense. I'm going on the route of parliamentary procedure. Now, so I believe that what is happening in the NDC has happened before in 2000, the year 2000, when the NDC lost the presidential elections and they were the minority in parliament. There was an avalanche of attacks on the NDC, except that the avalanche of attacks was external to the NDC, was not internal. That offered the NDC an opportunity to regroup and to fight back. Now the attacks appear to be from within, and that forces an invidious responsibility on the leadership of the party, the Council of Elders, the leadership of Parliament, to sit down, to look at what is happening within the party, fashion out a strategy to get out of it. I have no doubt in my mind that this is a storm and it will come. I have no doubt in my mind. And I believe seriously that NDC will become stronger after it has emerged from this storm. There is no reason in the present circumstances to change the leadership of the party. Because if you do so, you entrench the division. You entrench the suspicions within the party. The conventional wisdom will dictate that when a group is going through crisis, what you do is that you stabilize the group and then you can then look at the leadership. But you do not change the leadership within crisis.
So there will be a time soon or later when the NDC will reconstitute its leadership in Parliament?
Oh, I've been in Parliament long enough to know that I met Bagbin as the minority leader in Parliament. When NDC won, he was changed. Kumbo was brought. While NDC was still in power, Cletus Avoka was brought. And so I've known that leadership changes do occur. Indeed, even before Bagbin acceded to and became the minority leader, it was Kobnaji who was the majority leader. And even before Kobnaji, it was J.K. Owusu Achampo who was the majority leader. And so party will always constitute the leadership of the minority. But I'm saying that in turbulent times, you don't change the leadership of the party.
Are you equally as disappointed in this minority, almost majority, like the mass of the party? Because if you check with the mass of the party, they are very excited at what Okudzeto has done, because they don't seem to be able to do more than they are talking, and they don't seem to have their people listening to them.
Well, if what Okudzeto has done is going to be the yardstick, then we will be in the crisis for a very long time.
I see.
In matters of this nature, we require discipline within the minority and unity to be able to push through the agenda of the minority.
Okay.
Because we are going to be pandering to the dictates and taking action that in your view will satisfy the grassroots. Then we might.
I can understand that you will have to be preaching peace in this direction, but I'm sorry we have run out of time. Why some 20 seconds?
Just 2 seconds.
Yeah.
The resignation question is not that clear because it doesn't say so in the standing orders. I'm just a one-term member of Parliament.
Okay.
The only thing it says is that 153 says at least a membership of one committee, and then you go to the membership of the Privileges Committee, which sometimes impacts members. And then it says that you have a right to recuse yourself in the event it affects you or otherwise. But nowhere does it say that you can resign. So there are issues about whether he has capacity.
And the right to speak about should not actually be expressed in any law, because it's law, whether expressed or not.
But I was actually going to comment until Babin accepted it. So I deferred to Babin's wiser parliamentary practice. Because otherwise, initially I thought that he didn't have the right to resign.
Okay, so let's see in the coming days how the NDC will navigate this situation, and particularly from the perspective that Professor Ransford Jampo shares with us on this program. Thank you very much. Yao Boabing Asamoah is Director of Communications, the New Patriotic Party. Inus Ofuseni is lawyer and member of the NDC. Professor Ransford Jampo, Department of Political Science, University of Ghana. And thank you to Dr. Patrick Aboagye, Kuma Aboagye, and Kwame Sapong-Esiedu for helping us earlier, as well as Benjamin Boache. Thank you all so very much. This has been Newsfile. My name is Samson Ladi Anyenini. See you again next week with yet another edition. Have a good afternoon.